Arjuna, he actually was overwhelmed with multiple with compassion, with sense of how can I fight with my worshipables, who are my teachers and grandfathers, like that. So he was bewildered there, and that gave an opportunity to Krishna. It was his arrangement so that he can speak Bhagavad Gita for our benefit. And the first chapter primarily discusses several reasons Arjuna gives to not fight, and the entire Bhagavad Gita is nothing but answers to, those 6 reasons for not fighting. And here also, the second chapter is called as summary of Bhagavad Gita. So Krishna is summarizing a lot of concepts in the second chapter. You'll find how Krishna is describing about duty. He's describing about Nishkam Karma Yoga. He's talking on the platform of material benefit and religious benefits. And he's then talking about Buddhi Yoga. He's then also discussing Karma Yoga. So he touches upon multiple things in the second chapter. So the second chapter is almost like a summary of the entire Bhagavad Gita, and and then he goes on to elaborate from the third chapter onwards. So Arjuna had asked, or given five very powerful reasons for not fighting, and Krishna is answering them one by one. So he starts off, the second chapter starts off with Arjuna surrendering to Krishna after being confused and giving all those reasons. And Krishna, he initially thinks he doesn't accept, but then he ultimately accepts him, as a surrendered soul, and immediately chastises him as a guru should, and then starts giving him the science of soul to begin with. So, and then, leading up to, what some of the things we discussed last time, and then this particular shloka. So we'll start off with 2.16. Nasato vidyate bhavo,
Nasato vidyate bhavo,
na bhavo vidyate sata,
bhavo vidyate satah,
ubayorapi drishtvantas,
upayo paridrushtotas,
tvanyos tattvadarshibhi.
tvanyos tattvadarshibhi.
Anyone wants to read the translation? You all can see my screen, right?
Yes, we can.
Those who are seers of the truth have concluded that of the non-existent, the material body, there is no endurance, and of the eternal, the soul, there is no change. This they have concluded by studying the nature of both.
Right. So Krishna is continuing the description of the soul, and in the 15th verse, basically he was talking that, "O best of men, Arjuna, the person who is not disturbed by happiness and distress and is steady in both, is certainly eligible for liberation." And then he goes on to describe the 16th verse here, where he says, "Those who are seers of truth," is almost like taunting Arjuna, because and therefore, you can see that he's saying that those were seers of truth. So Arjuna is supposed to be, part of the Vedic culture. He's in a time where Vedic culture is still very, very prevalent. So he's saying that those are seers of truth, right? They have concluded that of the non-existent, the material body, there is no endurance, which means the material body is not going to last. So no point in trying to, save Bhishma and Drona's bodies. And of the eternal soul, there is no change. Their soul will remain, right? So their soul is not going to be destroyed. And in the further shlokas, he's going to kind of establish that even further, that how the soul is not destructible. So even though he may have several weapons, etc., he may shoot them at Bhishma and Drona, but the soul is eternal. While the material body, there is no point in trying to save it, because inevitably it's going to be destroyed. And okay, let me see if Prabhu is making any specific point which I can highlight. Partha Prabhu, you want to add something here?
Just yes, Praji. I mean, the verse is very straightforward. So there are two things. One is this body, and the other is the soul. So the body, as we know, it's changing, as we discussed last time also. 7 years and every cell changes. So it is going to change, and it will eventually come to an end. So it's kind of dead matter. Whereas the soul is actually eternal. You know, it's not changing. Even despite the fact that the body is externally changing, inside the soul is actually not affected at all in any way. It's not that just because my body is changing, I'm turning from, you know, youth to old age, the soul inside is also having some effect on it. No, the soul, as it says in this verse, it has no change. It just remains the way it is. So it's eternal in nature, in that sense.
Yeah, therefore you also see when somebody is, even though somebody may be, in his 40s, 50s, or even late 60s, 70s, right? The spirit will be the same in terms of, the attitude, etc. might be very similar in nature, that like that of a child. The desires may be very, very similar, right? Although, yeah, desires may change a little bit in terms of the environment and the what is possible for the body, but at the same time the enjoying spirit is the same still, right, even when somebody gets old. And here I think Srila Prabhupada is making a very important point, that the living entities therefore are always subordinate to the Supreme Lord. So here he is discussing that how the spirit soul is part and parcel of the Lord, and how the relationship between the spirit soul and the Supreme Lord is that of a part and a whole, right? So the part is always meant to serve the whole, just like the finger is always meant to serve the body, not that the finger can separately enjoy. So yeah, if my finger is cut and is lying on the ground, it's still my finger, but right now it's deprived or it's disconnected, and therefore it's deprived of all the energy that I may be, sending to my fingers, other fingers, by dint of putting the food in the mouth. So now it's useless, not able to function since it's separated. Till the time it is connected to my body, it has all the value, right? So similarly, our lives have meaning or value uh, till the time we are actually connecting. So all our achievements, till the time we're connecting to Krishna, so all our achievements are like big zeros, right? Without Krishna, it's just big zeros. So we may have millions of zeros, millions of achievement, but at the end of the day, if you're still stuck in the cycle of birth and death, what is the use, right? We are chewing the chewed, as Prahlad Maharaj said. So we've done all these things millions of times. We are trying to do it again and again because we've had, unlimited lifetimes. We've done all kinds of experiences. So if you achieve something now, it's not something great. It's not something new. So these are like big zeros. You're just doing the same thing, right? You're trying to extract happiness. If people have experience eating ganna, sugarcane stick, anyone has tried to chew on that and extract juice. So if
Maybe
you
chewing gum, if not sugar cane.
chewing gum, yeah. So if all the juice is out of that and you still try to chew, and you again go on chewing and chewing for days and days on end, right? People think pagal ho gaya. All the juice is gone already, still trying to chew, right? So that is our situation. We have been trying to enjoy material life from time immemorial, right? And like I said, all possible experiences, everything we've done already. The only thing we've not done is self-realization. Therefore, we are still stuck here. So the minute we understand this, right, and we can realize how foolish, in what foolish condition we are, right? We can try and attempt to learn Bhagavad Gita and get out of the cycle of birth and death. So the relationship between the Supreme Lord, or the part and the whole, is that of master and servant. We cannot enjoy separately. The zeros have no value. If you add one in front of the zeros, so all those zeros now will have a very great value. All your skills and achievements will find perfection once you add that one Krishna in front of all those zeros. So when you add Krishna in your life has the greatest meaning, right? So because the relationship is of the servant and the master. So the living entities therefore are always subordinate to the Supreme Lord, as is the case of master and servant, or the teacher and the taught. Such clear knowledge is impossible to understand under the spell of ignorance. And to drive away such ignorance, Lord teaches Bhagavad Gita for enlightenment of all living entities for all time. So every one of you all are very, very fortunate. You are taking shelter of Bhagavad Gita to find such clear knowledge. I think I was mentioning in the previous classes multiple times. In fact, I've mentioned there are so many philosophers and thinkers, and you can actually open the history books. You'll find Aristotle and Socrates, and so many of them, even for that matter, Darwin, etc. These are people who are, in the Vedic term, you can call them Gyanis, right? They will, sit and watch the ocean for days on end, look at the lightning, and try to figure out, what is this creation? What is it? What is my role? What am I doing here? Right? Who am I? So all these questions, these guys have spent lifetimes trying to understand, answers to these questions. And some of them, even after finishing their life, they have not been able to. While some have, landed on some weird conclusions like Darwin. And some others, after spending a lot of time, have concluded that yes, we are something more than the body, right? Whereas Bhagavad Gita immediately, right in the beginning, gives you this information that we are not this body, but we are the souls, and our relationship with the Supreme is that of a servant of and the Master. Such clear knowledge, it's impossible to understand if you are under the spell of ignorance. All right, moving on to the next verse. Avinashi tu tadvidhi
Avinashi tu tadvidhi
yena sarvam idam tatam
yena sarvam idam tatam
vinasham avyavyasya
vinasham avayasyasya
na kaschit kartum arhati.
na kaschit karhatum arhati.
Anyone would like to read the translation?
Yes, that which pervades the entire body, you should know to be indestructible. No one is able to destroy that imperishable soul.
So again, Prabhupada starts with, this verse more clearly explains the real nature of soul, which is spread all over the body. And he goes on to describe about consciousness, how we feel the pains and pleasures because of consciousness. And, then he goes on to describe how the soul is so minute that it's impossible for any microscope to look at the soul. So, there are shlokas from Shvetasvarta Upanishad describing the size of the soul. So people who attended the 3-day Bhagavad Gita course, and of course others who've been, studying along, what is the size of the soul?
It is 1 by 10,000 tip of the hair.
Excellent, yes. So it's 1 by the 1/10,000 portion of part of the upper portion of the hair, which means the tip of the hair. So that is how minute the soul is. So it's impossible for, through gadgets to look at the soul, right? But how we can understand the soul is present? What is the proof of the presence of soul?
Our
Okay.
consciousness.
Consciousness, yes. So the example is given just like, if on a cloudy day, we still understand it's daytime. How? How do we understand it's daytime if you don't see the sun? By the presence of light, right? So the whole atmosphere is lit up. So even if we don't have direct perception of sun because it's, covered by some clouds, if we know it's daytime, if we understand that, the sun is present because of the light. Similarly, the soul is part and parcel of the Supreme Lord. It's a particle in the, light coming from the Supreme Personality's body. So we are part and parcel of the Supreme Lord, and that present in our bodies. We can understand how the soul is there by consciousness. Consciousness is the light which is kind of pervading the entire body, and therefore, if someone pinches you, immediately feel pain because you're conscious, right? So consciousness is a symptom of soul's presence. And there's a description how the soul is floating, in the region of the heart, in the 5 kinds of airs, which is prana, pan, vayan, saman, udan. These are 5 different kinds of airs, and is situated within the heart. So from there, it's actually spreading its entire influence across the body. And even material science admits that actually it's the heart which is the center of all the activity, from where, because of the heart pump, everything is functioning. right? The red blood corpuscles are able to kind of break down the food, and energy is generated from the mitochondria in the cells. So all this function is happening because, and it requires energy. It needs energy to start such function. It's not like we don't have plugs in our cells. कहीं पे हमने wire लगाया नहीं है, right? So automatically there is energy. So that energy is actually coming uh, from the heart, which even the doctors admit. So and we understand that it's the soul which is in the region of the heart, which is actually responsible for the functioning of the body. So we get oxygen, we break it down, and we produce energy, and the food is then digested, absorbed, etc. It's all because of the presence of the soul. And consciousness, which pervades our entire body, is a symptom of the soul. And one can understand that this consciousness, I am conscious only of my body, right? Is anyone here conscious of, or aware of what exactly is happening in someone else's body at this point in time?
No.
No, right?
No.
So how?
No.
Yeah. So the foolish Mayavadis, they think that, oh, we are the super soul, or we are right now under the material experience, but we are actually the super soul, or the super soul and the soul is one. Atma and Paramatma are one. So the individual soul, or us, we are conscious of our own body, right? The consciousness pervades only one body. It's not pervading someone else's body. But the super soul is someone who's aware of everybody's body, what is going on in everyone's body, what is going on in everyone's mind and heart, what are they thinking, in what consciousness or attitude are they performing these activities. The super soul is aware of everybody. That is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, right? We are not. Okay, 18th one. Okay, any questions or reflections at this point before we move ahead? If there is any doubt in between, you can stop me and we can address that. Or if there is any reflection, so reflection is something which you hear makes sense, and maybe you have some other experience to share around that. So yeah, we cannot go on and on into different experiences, but anything which is very relevant, maybe a short thing you want to share, please stop me and we can hear that as well. So any questions or reflections till now? All right, we'll move ahead. You can, stop me in between if you have anything to share. Antavanta ime deha
Tavanta ime deha
nityayasya ukta sharirina
nityashoktaः शरीरिणः
anashino aprameyasya
अनाशिनो अप्रमेयस्य
प्रमेयस्य
tasmad yudhyasva bharata.
तस्मात् युध्यस्व भारत.
Anyone want to read the translation?
Yes, I can read.
Yeah, please go on.
Am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Translation. The material body of the indestructible, immeasurable, and eternal living entity is sure to come to an end. Therefore, fight, O descendant of Bharata.
Right. So again, here, this verse is actually reverses Arjuna's argument that by not fighting, he will save his family members from harm. So everybody, like I said earlier also, there is some disturbance. Maybe those who are not talking can be on mute. So everyone's body must perish, for no material body has true existence. Fearing for the death of others is ignorance, because at the end of the day, they are going to die even if Arjuna doesn't fight. The soul, the real person within the body, is indestructible. So Srila Prabhupada is writing, so from both point of views, there is no cause of lamentation, because the living entity, as he cannot be killed, nor the material body, he cannot be saved for any length of time or permanently protected. So the material body is perishable. We cannot do much about it. So even if Arjuna doesn't fight, At the end of the day, they have to die. And he kind of moves ahead and further stresses the same point. So we'll look at the next one and holistically kind of discuss this. So ya enam veti hantaram
Ya enam veti hantaram
yaschainam manyate hatam
yaschainam
Yasyainam
manyate
manyate
tam
tam
ubhau tau na vijanito
ubhau
bhavana vijanito
nayam hanti na hanyate.
nayam
nayanti
anti na
nanyate.
hanyate.
Everyone should try and recite. It may be difficult, just you can try and recite. Okay, anyone who wants to read the translation?
Yeah, I'll read. Amit.
Yes. Go on.
Neither he who thinks the living entity the slayer, nor he who thinks it slain is in knowledge, for the self stays not, nor is slain.
Yes. So, so here Krishna is saying that people who are thinking that the living entity is killed or is the killer, both are in ignorance or both are not in knowledge. That's what the shloka means, right? And Prabhupada here in the purport, he is saying that when an embodied living entity is hurt by fatal weapon, it is to be known that the living entity within the body is not killed. The spirit soul is so small that it's impossible to kill him by any material weapon, as will be evident from subsequent verses. Nor is the living entity killable because of his spiritual constitution. What is killed is supposed to be killed, is the body. So actually, from the moment we are born, we are dying every day, right? Like we discussed, the cells die, the new ones regenerate, etc. So this, however, does not at all encourage killing of the body. So just because Krishna is saying that the soul cannot die or nobody kills, doesn't give you the right to harm someone, right? Someone will say, Gita mein likha hai, yeah, nobody kills and nobody is killed, so let me go ahead and kill someone, right? So here it's saying killing the body of anyone without authority is abominable and is punishable by the law of the state as well as the law of the Lord. Arjuna, however, is being engaged in killing for the principle of religion and not whimsically. So it is just like if say for example, Amit, you're staying in a house, in a rented house, right? And you're saying, okay, this is not my house actually. There's a temporary arrangement. I'm temporarily living here. So that doesn't mean someone has the right to get inside the house and try and break it, right? So although it may be temporary, it's not that when the house is destroyed, Amit is destroyed, right? So it's not that when the body is killed, the soul is killed. But still, you're actually causing harm because you're destroying Amit's house. Although it may be temporary, it may be on rent, etc., but you don't have the right to do that. You'll be punished by the state's law. Similarly, you'll be punished by the laws of God if you try to kill someone like that, if you try to take away somebody's material body. And Arjuna here is actually killed, is killing for the principle of religion, right? Not whimsically. He's just like a soldier on the battlefield or the border of the country is shooting, bullets and killing hundreds of soldiers on behalf or of the country to protect the country's borders, right? And they are awarded similarly, and they are not punished for it. Similarly, here Arjuna is actually killing for the principle of religion and not whimsically, under direct orders of Krishna. All right. न जायते म्रियते वा कदाचिन्
Jayate mriyate va kadachan
नायं भूत्वा भविता वा न भूयः
nayam va bhavita va na bhuyah
Hallelujah.
अजो नित्यः शाश्वतोऽयं पुराणो
ajo nitya shashvatam purana
Purano.
न हन्यते हन्यमाने शरीरे.
na
na
hanyate
nyate
hanyamane
hanyamane
sharire.
sharire.
Anyone wants to read the translation here?
I'll do that. For the soul, there is neither birth nor death at any time. He has not come into being, does not come into being, and will not come into being. He is unborn, eternal, ever existing, and primeval. He is not slain when the body is slain.
Right. So for the soul, there is neither birth nor death. The soul is eternal. He has not come into being, does not come into being, which means that we were individual souls eternally, right? We have not come into being. And Prabhupada in the purport, he goes on to describe how, because of this body, we have material calculation. We are limiting ourselves to how we, experience things here. That okay, it's actually manufactured us at a certain point in time, and even our own bodies, it comes into existence at a certain point in time. It stays for some time, it grows, it produces some byproducts, it dwindles, and finally dies or vanishes. Right. So these are the 6 transformations everybody goes through. Right. So similarly, with this experience, we also kind of label the same experience on the soul, or we think like that soul kabhi to born hua hoga, right? But Krishna is here describing that the soul there is neither birth or death. It did not come into existence at any point in time in past. That does not come into being, or will not come into being in the future also. So it's eternal, unborn, ever existing, and primeval, and therefore he is not slain when the body is slain. So again, Krishna is trying to put forth argument by describing the nature of the soul, that the soul won't be harmed, so don't worry, right? At the end of the day, and here, the soul does not, Prabhupada writing, the soul does not at any time become old as the body does. The soul, the so-called old man, therefore, feels himself to be in the same spirit as in his childhood or youth. The change of the body does not affect the soul, right? And okay, let's see what else. Prabhu, you want to add something? Till time I figure if there is any interesting point to be added. Parthapriya Prabhu, anything to add?
Sorry, I was away. I just came back.
Yeah.
So in the purport, Prabhupada mentions about the 6 transformations. Did you speak about the 6 transformations?
I just spoke of the 6 transformations.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I was away. I just came back.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. So you want to add something?
No, I don't think.
Yeah. I think the last bit is quite interesting. So both the super soul Paramatma and atomic soul Jivatma are situated. So the example is given of 2 birds sitting on the same tree. So the tree is the body, and the birds are the living entity and the super soul. So one bird is actually interested in eating the fruit of the tree, while the other bird is simply watching in what consciousness or what attitude the other bird is working. Right. So the atomic soul are situated in the same tree of the body, within the same heart of the living being, and only one who has become free from all material desires as well as lamentation can, by the grace of Supreme, understand the glories of the soul. So one can realize, the glories of the soul, and of course the super soul, Krishna, the fountainhead. So he can understand that only when he has become free from all material desires and lamentation. And Krishna says, or rather in the purport, Prabhupada also mentions that one who surrenders to Krishna or his bona fide representative, right? Oh, actually, it's mentioned here only, right? As it is disclosed in the following chapters, Arjuna is the atomic soul, forgetful of his real nature. Therefore, it requires to be enlightened by Krishna or his bona fide bona fide representative, the spiritual master. So, one who actually surrenders to Krishna or his bona fide representative can be enlightened to a point where he is free from material desires, and he can actually understand the glories of the soul and the super soul. Okay. Any thoughts or reflections till this point? Any questions anyone want to ask, or should we move ahead?
Also, Prabhuji, there is this point. I don't know if you mentioned earlier this, that when the fact that the body is changing also leads to forgetfulness. So just like, I mean, now it's like 12 o'clock, and we may not remember what we did at 12 yesterday, or maybe even if we remember that, maybe we do not remember what we did 2-3 days ago. So as the body is changing, that also leads to forgetfulness. And when there is a complete change in body, that is when a person dies and accepts a new body, at that time we completely forget about the past life. Only in rare circumstances do we actually remember, that someone can remember their past lives. On the other hand, for Krishna or God, he doesn't have a material body like us, and therefore there is no question of forgetfulness. It's an eternal form of the Lord, and can therefore, he knows all past, present, and future, like that. But for a living entity, because he's accepted this material body which gets transformed, there is also, it leads to forgetfulness.
Right. So I think, yeah.
Sir, I have one question.
Yes.
Sir, we say that it is written that the soul has no birth, he therefore has no past, present or future. But sometimes he says कि आप पहले जन्म का कुछ होगा. Even if we share, मतलब कभी हम बोलते, if we give something to somebody, we say कि उसका कुछ देना बाकी होगा, इसीलिए हम like, तो how we can, मतलब क्यों ऐसा होता है?
So yeah, so the past Pichla Janam is in connection with the body itself, right? So because of the body, there is past life, previous life, or current and the next life, right? For the soul is actually eternal and continues its eternal existence. So for him, there is no, Pichla body mein aisa tha. So it's just in connection with the body that we have past life or future life like that. Does that answer your question, or were you trying to ask something else?
No, I got my answer, sir.
Okay, great.
So Prabhuji, I have a question. So what about the samskars? Where do samskars fall in?
So samskars also are basically from your previous lives, all your previous experiences in all the different material bodies you had, right? And this life is now meant to, actually cultivate samskaras or cultivate, habits and practices that are conducive for your spiritual life. So thereby you can actually give up the worldly samskaras and go back to God. Is that okay?
Okay, thank you.
Right.
I have a question.
Yes, please.
So when somebody dies, the soul immediately leaves the body
Mhm.
and takes position in another body,
Right.
or is it after we do all those prayers and all, we say 13th day we have to do for the soul? How does it go?
Interesting question. So, yes. So the soul immediately gets another body as well. It's like, if I have to take a step, correct? So I have to first, okay. If I'm taking a step before lifting the hind leg, I have to actually place my other feet on solid ground, and then only I will lift the other leg, right, to move ahead. So similarly, the soul immediately accepts a new body. Now, what happens, or at least this is my understanding, and we can still confirm this because I'm also not extremely well versed with this whole Shraddha process and everything. One minute. Sorry. Yeah. So what happens is immediately you get another body, but it may not be exactly like a human form immediately, but you have a form. Like, say for example, people who actually die an untimely death, they get ghost bodies, right? That's also a body, right? It's called yatna sharir. So they enter in that yatna sharir, and they basically suffer. And even someone who's being dragged to Yamraj to be sentenced according to whatever he's done, he's in his at least that's my understanding, he's still in his yatna sharir, wherein while going through that whole the journey, they are actually suffering. The soul actually won't experience any suffering directly. It needs a body to experience those sufferings. So I believe they also get into Yatna Sharir, and for those 13 days they travel, and the whole place is like burning, almost like there are 14 suns burning together, and they require water, they require food, and whatever you offer as Shraddha, or we have the fourth day, the 13th, 11th, and 13th day, etc. So it actually reaches the person. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Right. So moving on, the next verse. Veda vinashinam
Veda vinashinam nityam
nityayenam ajam avyayam
yainam ajamavyayam
katham sa purusha partha
katham sa purusha partha
kama ghatayati hantikam.
kam ghatayati hantikam.
Anyone who wants to read the translation?
O Partha, how can a person who knows that the soul is indestructible, eternal, unborn, and immutable kill anyone or cause anyone to kill?
Right. So here basically Krishna is offering to Arjuna knowledge or jnana, with which he can actually engage in the warfare. Right. He's saying that how can a person who knows that the soul is indestructible, eternal, unborn, immutable, kill anyone or cause anyone to kill? So you can go ahead and fight this war, and you won't incur sinful reaction. Like so again, one of the reasons that he gave in the first chapter was he will incur sin if he kills people. But here the argument is destroyed that okay, you're not killing the soul, and therefore you won't incur any sinful reactions. So someone may say that okay, fine, granting that the soul does not die, still the bodies of the man called Bhishma and others are going to be destroyed in the battle. That is wrong, because it will be we will be improperly depriving them of happiness they will derive from their bodies. And Krishna, to explain Arjuna the fault in that logic, he goes on to explain the next verse as well. So in fact, here he gives the example of how Arjuna will be free from sin. He gives the example of how justice of peace may award capital punishment or death sentence to someone who's a murderer, right? So it's not that the judge will be accountable for giving such a punishment to the killer. It's actually according to the codes of Manu Samhita, it's correct, and it's not something personal vengeance the judge is trying to extract out of giving this kind of punishment to the killer. But it's actually as per the codes of law and codes of Manu Samhita as well. In fact, it is said that it's good if the person gets this punishment in this life itself, so that he doesn't have to go through very painful suffering in the next life. These days we have this
No
whole
death sentence.
where people, sorry,
Like no death sentence is given in
yeah,
some countries.
people are campaigning for no death sentence without knowing that actually if the murderer doesn't get that death sentence, his next life is going to be super miserable. And then people will blame God, kare aisa life diya. Right? So filled with so much miseries, intolerable misery, like that. So it's actually good for the killer to be actually hanged, right? And I think here and even the next verse, it's described that how violence has its utility, right? Yeah, in this verse, in fact, itself, where Prabhupada is starting, everything has its proper utility. A man who's situated in complete knowledge knows where and how to apply a thing for its proper utility. So similarly, violence also has its utility. So people who are, batting for the so-called non-violence in every possible situation, they actually are not in knowledge, right? So violence, it's there, as a quality in the Lord also, right? He also fights, he also kills demons. Therefore, it's actually a quality in us as well. But one has to understand the proper utility of violence and where to apply it. So here, violence is being applied by the judge to actually show mercy to the person, right? Any questions or thoughts on this? Also, I think towards the end, Prabhupada is giving another example. A surgical operation is not meant to kill the patient, but to cure him. Therefore, fighting to be executed by Arjuna at the instruction of Krishna is with full knowledge, and there is no possibility of sinful reaction. So there's no question of sin because it's under Krishna's direct order. It's like an expert surgeon using the knife on somebody's body, but that's to cure the person, not to kill him. So we also may get some heavy punishments at times. We will question, even though we might be, practicing devotees also, we'll start questioning the Lord. Arey, why me? Why so much suffering? Right? We should understand that it's actually, the knife in the hands of an expert surgeon for curing us of something very, very terrible disease that we've acquired. Anything here? Any reflections, any thoughts or questions?
Amit has question.
Yes, Amit.
Guruji, I'm just wondering because if somebody is hanged, so we just discussed that untimely death, people go into some other yoni and all those things.
Yeah, those bodies, yeah.
If the person repents, if the person realizes, then it's one thing. But if the person doesn't realize and goes to untimely death, then it's a different story, I guess. So I'm not sure if this, hanging thing is important. I don't know how it serves the purpose. It's more important for the person to realize what he's done, and पश्चाताप करना बहुत जरूरी है. अगर पश्चाताप ही नहीं है तो what's the point?
Yeah, but the laws of karma will act, right? Even if you repent, the laws of karma will act. So if this hanging doesn't happen, every action has to have an equal and opposite reaction. So if he doesn't, get it back, he will get it back. So if he doesn't, get this kind of punishment, he will suffer for a very long period of time. Here it will be finished in one shot. If it doesn't happen here, then next life he will be suffering terribly, right? Even if and if he repents, that's good, but that doesn't change his karma. The only thing which can possibly change his karma is spirituality. When the account is transferred from the hands of Durga Devi in the hands of Krishna, only Krishna has the power to change somebody's account, or do some adjustments there rather. So he can minimize the punishment. He can actually in fact get rid of the whole thing as well. But yeah, typically we see that he minimize it to a very, very small extent. If my hand is supposed to be cut, I'll just get a scratch. And that too, Krishna will give those specific reactions which are helpful for me to advance. From my own account, he will give me those reactions which are helpful for me to advance in Krishna consciousness.
Just a note here, just recently actually, devotees distribute Bhagavad Gitas in prison houses. And one such prisoner who is in Nasik jail, he wrote a letter to the temple in ISKCON Juhu here in Mumbai. And I'm just reading his letter. So he says, Hare Krishna, I am a prisoner in Nasik jail. I'm in jail for an economic offense. I have learnt my lesson. I have read a few books of respected Srila Prabhupada in the jail library. I request you to please send me one mala so I can start chanting the Mahamantra. Also, please send me the book, The Journey of Self-Discovery by Srila Prabhupada, and any other books which you may deem fit. Please use only government post or speed post to send me the same. Jail does not accept courier. For this act of kindness, I shall always remain grateful to you. So now this is something written by a prisoner who is there in jail. And because devotees actually distribute Bhagavad Gita even in jail, he is actually understood and valued it. So the transformation of heart has taken place. And just like Prabhuji was mentioning that now, things can change. Even his reactions that he may, suffer, whether it's in this material world through the medium of jail or through afterlife, through hellish conditions, that may change very much, because now he's accepting the knowledge, and it's going to transform his life in the sense that all his karma might start get, erased, because he wants to take up the process of chanting Hare Krishna. So spiritual practices or Krishna consciousness is the only way by which actually one can eradicate, as Prabhuji was mentioning, his sinful reactions.
So actually, the kind of question you asked is exact same question what Parikshit Maharaj asked Sukdev Goswami. That what is the use of atonement or going through a punishment or some process as repentance for something if people again commit the same act? What is the use of atonement? Okay, I committed some crime, as an atonement I'll do some social service. Right? In the West, in schools they give such kind of punishment because they cannot punish for some other in another way, but they would give them some community service, right? Or they give him something else in a hope that the person may transform. But we know that even after going through jail, sometimes the thief may still want to steal, or the murderer may still want to do some murders, right? So Parikshit Maharaj is asking, what is the use of such punishment or atonement? So the same question is asked there, and Shukdev Goswami then says that yes, it is just like, or Parikshit Maharaj rather says it's just like elephant bathing. He takes a nice bath and then he comes out and throws mud on his body, right? So what is the use of that bath? So Shukdev Goswami then answers that yes, it is ignorance because of which people continue this, committing the same acts even after going through certain atonements, and the propensity to sin doesn't go away from the heart. The propensity to sin will only be destroyed if you take up spiritual life, if you practice Krishna consciousness, chant Hare Krishna Mahamantra. Like Parthapriya was just saying, the heart transformation, he read out the whole letter, right? The heart transformation can only happen through something spiritual. It is impossible if you go through any atonement process, the desire to commit that same sin will still be there. So that seed is burned completely by the chanting of Hare Krishna Mahamantra. And you also take a vow not to commit further sins. And the previous account of karma is then taken care of by your chanting of Hare Krishna Mahamantra.
So actually there are two things, if you want to like literally break it down. One is reaction to sin. The other is propensity to do that again. So even if reaction to sin is gone by some atonement, propensity to want to do it again will not go. Because that wanting to do that same sin again, and it works with us also. We may do small sinful activities, and once we do it, it gives birth to wanting to do it again. Right? We can feel that, with whatever small desires we may have. So reaction is one thing, the other is to want to do it again. So to want to do it again, that can only be erased by devotional service. Otherwise, that propensity will take birth again within us, like that. So reaction is just one part of it.
Yeah. And it's simple. You have the higher taste, you're no longer interested to commit sinful activities, and you have knowledge that it'll bind you and actually block your spiritual progress. So with intelligence you can avoid. All right, the next verse. Vasamsi jinnani yatha vihaya
Vasham shishirnani yatha vihaya
navani grinati naroparani
Navani
granati naro parani
tatha sharirani vihaya jinnanya
tatha sharirani vihaya jirnani
anyani samyati navani dehi.
anyani samyati navani dehi.
Anyone wants to read the translation?
Yes. As the person puts on new garments, giving up old ones, the soul similarly accepts new material bodies, giving up the old and useless ones.
Right. So here basically Prabhupada describes how changing bodies is inevitable. Right? The soul has to accept a new body when the time is up. And he again describes how we go through different stages of childhood to boyhood to youth and then to old age, right? And after that, when the just like when you are living in an apartment and the apartment is no longer fit to live. At different points in time, there may be painting required, there may be some plumbing required, some repairs required here and there. But when the ceiling is actually falling on your head, you have to move out. Right? When the building itself is about to fall, you have to find another apartment and shift. So similarly, the soul may pass from childhood to boyhood to youth, and then to old age. And there, when the apartment of the body is about to fall, the soul changes the body into transferred to another body. Right, and here basically Krishna is defeating the argument of Arjuna's refusal to fight, because that will not protect Bhishma and Drona. In fact, it goes on to describe that how Bhishma and Drona were actually in the fag end of their lives. They were old, right? And in fact, it'll be good for them that they'll have rejuvenated bodies, which will be they will have more strength and vigor. And of course, because of their pious karmas, they may actually be promoted to the spiritual world, or if not, at least the heavenly planets. So there was no actual cause for Arjuna to then lament or still try to somehow protect their bodies. And I think we discussed the two birds sitting on the same tree. So yeah. Anything else you want to add, Partha Prabhu, here?
No, Prabhuji.
Yeah, I think just one point which is interesting here. So okay. Arjuna is advised herewith by the Lord not to lament for the bodily change of his old grandfather and teacher. He should rather be happy to kill their bodies in the righteous fight, so that they may be cleansed at once of all reactions from various bodily activities. One who lays down his life on the sacrificial altar or in the proper battlefield is at once cleansed of bodily reactions and promoted to higher status of life. So there was no cause for lamentation for Arjuna. So in fact, this reminds me of an episode slightly in connection to this, but not exactly related. But yeah, so Bhishma Dev towards the end of Mahabharata, after in fact the Mahabharata battle was fought, Yudhishthir Maharaj was feeling so much guilt that because of me 64 crore people died, and so much loss and so many widows. He was just could not come out of guilt. There are so many personalities, including Lord Krishna himself, tried to counsel him, but he was still feeling. Of course, the soft-hearted devotee is feeling guilty that just because to make him king, so many people had to die. And although Krishna could, of course, console him, but he left the job for Bhishma Dev to glorify Bhishma Dev and to actually have Bhishma Dev instruct Yudhishthir Maharaj. And there's an entire section in Srimad Bhagavatam where Bhishma Dev is instructing Yudhishthir Maharaj, and there are so many instructions, wonderful instructions, also instructions on how to become a leader, and manage things. All sorts of instructions are there, very, very interesting. So just when Krishna was actually taking Yudhishthir Maharaj to Bhishma Dev, and Draupadi was along and all the Pandavas are along. So Draupadi questioned that how can Bhishma Dev instruct Yudhishthir Maharaj? He was there in that assembly where of Vastraharan, where she was attempted to be distrobed. So how can and this person, he was silent. Although being the elderly in the family, he did not say anything. So Bhishma Dev replied that yes, you're right. Right? I was not qualified to say anything to Yudhishthir Maharaj because of that. But now, since Arjuna has pierced me every part of my body with his arrows, and all that blood which was formed due to eating the food which was offered by the Kauravas, under whose debt I could not speak anything, all that blood has just flown away from my body. So now I'm purified, laying down my life in the proper battlefield, and of course through Arjuna's arrows all the blood is gone. So now I'm again back to my senses, and I can now start instructing Yudhishthir Maharaj. So she was pacified with that answer. All right, going to the next one. Nainam chindanti shastrani.
Nainam chindanti shastrani.
Nainam dahati pavaka.
Nainam
dahati pavakaha.
न चैनं क्लेदयन्त्यापो
न चैनं क्लेदयन्त्यापो
न शोष्यति मारुतः.
न शोषयति मारुतः.
Anyone who would like to read the translation?
I'll read.
Yes, please.
The soul can never be cut in pieces by any weapon, but burnt by fire, not moistened by water, nor withered by the wind.
Right. So,
So,
yeah. So this again, Krishna is stressing to Arjuna that look, you cannot kill the soul. The soul can never be cut into pieces by any weapon. So, you may have very sharp arrows, and you may have fire weapon, which even the modern scientists they have created nuclear weapons. You may have water weapons. So normally the fire weapons are counteracted with the water weapons, right? And material scientists they don't know of water weapons yet, but in the Vedic times, and especially here, Arjuna had all these kind of weapons. He had the fire weapon, he had the water weapon, he had the wind weapon, which could create a tornado, right? So Krishna is saying that all these weapons it cannot kill the soul, right? So no use of worrying about that. None of these weapons will work. In fact, yeah, it also reminds me of another episode from the Krishna book where there was a Shiva Jwara. I think in the episode where Bhaumasur is there. So Bhaumasur, or which was the Asur's name? I forgot. Was it Bhaumasur, Prabhu? Parthapriya Prabhu?
No, I'm not sure.
Okay. So I think it was Bhaumasur. So yeah, this was the Asur who had thousands of arms and he was very very powerful, and he was breaking mountains just to since he had no one to fight, and then Lord Shiva he had blessed him, with so many things and strength and weapons etc. But he had this itch to fight meeting somebody who would match his strength and fight. So Lord Shiva, kind of in a way cursed him that you're foolish, but you'll soon meet someone who will kill you, who will be, breaking your ego. And then there was a fight because of Usha and Anirudh, because Usha was the daughter of Bhava, so I don't know, I'm forgetting the name of the demon, but yeah. So, there was a fight between Krishna and this Asura, and then he invited Lord Shiva because he was a great devotee of Lord Shiva, and Lord Shiva had promised that he will help in every way. So he invited Lord Shiva, and Lord Shiva, Kartikeya, Ganesh, all on one side fought from his side, whereas Krishna, Balram, and all the Yadus they fought on the other side. And so in the end, when all kinds of weapons failed, Lord Shiva released the Shiva Jwara, which again was burning like hundreds of suns together. It was causing so much heat, and Krishna then released Narayan Jwara, which produced so much cold to counteract the heat, and ultimately the Shiva Jwara, with folded hands, surrendered to Krishna that because it could not tolerate the cold of Narayan Jwara. So, as personified, he begged to Krishna that and prayed, glorified that, Krishna, you are the supreme personality of Godhead, not Lord Shiva, and I am surrendering to you. And then, Krishna pulls back the Narayan Jwara like that. And then, following which, Lord Shiva also then glorifies Krishna. And Krishna by then has cut off all the 1,000 arms of this demon. So, yeah, I mean, just a story that I quickly remembered. So yeah, the soul can never be cut into pieces, which also kind of brings us to the fact that of what some of the Mayavadis they claim that okay, we are all the supreme has now divided into many, and then we'll become one again, and we'll be the Lord, etc. Once we are realized like that. So the soul actually is indivisible, cannot be cut into pieces. It's very very clear here. Anything to add, Partha Priyapu, or should we move ahead?
Yeah, and so it's not cut to pieces, and eternally it's the part and parcel of Krishna or God. It's not that now we are part and parcel and later we merge into God, or at some point before we were part of God, now we've become part and parcel. Eternally, we are the part and parcel of the Supreme Lord. So that is what Prabhupada explains in the purport also. It's also given in other places in the Bhagavad Gita and also in other scriptures. So it's eternally so. Prabhupada mentions Varaha Puran, where it's mentioned that living entities are described as separated parts and parcels of the Supreme Lord.
Okay, I'll quickly, it's already 12:29. We'll quickly take two more verses because it's almost like a section. So we'll quickly touch upon these two verses and then we'll stop for questions and end it with the Kirtan.
Sir, that monster was Poundra.
No, not Pondak, not Pondak. Either Bhaumasura or
Banasur.
Bhasmasura, Bhaumasura, I'm not sure.
Banasur.
Huh? Banasura.
Banasur.
Banasura, yes, Banasura, correct. Achedyoyam adayoyam
Achedyoyam adayoyam
akledyo ashosha evacha
akledyo shosha evacha
nitya sarva gata sthanur
nitya sarvagatah sthanur
achaloyam sanatana.
achaloyam sanatanaha.
The individual soul is unbreakable, insoluble, can be neither burned nor dried. He is everlasting, present everywhere, unchangeable, immovable, and eternally the same. Right? So again, more properties of the soul, that it's unbreakable, insoluble, neither burned nor dried. He's everlasting, which means he's eternal, present everywhere. So Prabhupada describes how the soul is all pervading in the sense that it's in the entire creation, there are innumerable souls present everywhere, in water, air, even in fire. Not that the soul is sterilized by the fire. So even on sun planet, there are living entities. There is sun god, there are other living entities. They have bodies which are suitable to live on the sun planet, more fiery bodies, right? So the souls are present everywhere, right? And they are unchangeable, immovable, and eternally the same. Right. Quickly moving on to the next one. And we'll stop after the next one. Avyaktoyam achintyoyam
Avyaktoyam achintoyam
avikaryoyam uchyate
avikaryoyam uchyate
tasmad evam viditvainam
tasmadevam viditvainam
nanu sochitum arhasi.
nanu sochitum arhasi.
Anyone wants to read the translation?
Shall I take it?
Said that the soul is invisible, inconceivable, and immutable. Knowing this, you should not grieve for the body.
Yes. So, okay. This reference is there. Right. So, here basically again, it is said that the soul is invisible, inconceivable, and immutable. Knowing this, you should not grieve for the body. So, in the purport, Prabhupada is again describing that, as described previously, the magnitude of the soul is so small for our material calculation, it cannot even be seen by the most powerful microscope. And he also goes on to describe that how we should accept shruti, right, or knowledge, which is actually so for things which are which we cannot perceive, like inconceivable, we cannot conceive it. Like I was describing how there were so many philosophers who, after spending a lifetime, concluded that we are something more than the body. So it's actually inconceivable for us to kind of understand the nature of the soul, or what the soul is, what are the properties of the soul, right? So therefore, we depend on Shruti, authorized knowledge, or Vedic wisdom, right? There are three ways to gain knowledge. There is Shabda Praman, which is by hearing from the authorized scriptures or authorized sources. There is Anuman Praman, we could draw inferences and speculate, and Pratyaksha Praman, that is knowledge through direct perception. So here the direct perception won't work because the soul is so minute, right? It's impossible for us to perceive it, right? And we cannot even speculate, because there are people who speculated and spent lifetimes. Some of them might have reached to a conclusion closer to this. many of them have failed to even reach this kind of conclusion. So we can simply depend on Shabda Praman, which is accepting the authority or knowledge from an authoritative source like Bhagavad Gita, and immediately get to the fact that we are not this body, we are the soul, and these are the descriptions of the nature of the soul or properties of the soul, like that. So, and he gives an example, just like there is no source of understanding the identity of the father except by the authority of mother. Similarly, there is no source of understanding the soul except by studying the Vedas. In other words, the soul is inconceivable by human experimental knowledge. So yeah, if you try to find who's your father by conducting a DNA test, and the father is traveling in some other city, you may spend 100 lifetimes, but you won't reach to a conclusion of who's your father. The simple process to just ask mother, and she will guide you. So Shastra or scriptures or Vedas are like mother. They can guide us who's the father. So this concept is repeated in the Vedas in different ways just to confirm the stability of the conception of soul. The repetition of something is necessary in order that we understand the matter thoroughly without error. So likewise here in Bhagavad Gita right now also Krishna is repeating different properties of the soul, and he's mentioned that the soul is eternal multiple times in different ways. Similarly in scriptures also there are multiple places the eternality of the soul is mentioned, right? And the description of what is a soul and how we are souls is also described. And just so that we remember through repetition, and then we can apply it in the right situation. All right, so we'll stop here. The next section, basically, Krishna is then giving an argument from the 26th verse that even if you don't think that you are the soul, and you will touch upon the philosophies of atheists or Buddhists, even then there is no reason to lament. So Krishna will give that argument also, just so that there are no arguments for Arjuna to kind of not fight. So he's explained it from the Vedic point of view, that how we are not this body, but we are the soul, and these are the properties of the soul. Therefore, there is no reason for Arjuna to lament at the loss of bodies of Bhishma and Drona and others. So yeah, this is almost like a summary. And after this, Krishna won't talk about the soul concept much going ahead in the later chapters, and therefore he's kind of spending time here and repeating the concept of soul with different properties. So we'll stop here. If you have any questions, any comments, or any reflections, we'll take that for the next 5 minutes, and then we'll end it with a short kirtan. So anything, anyone?
For those who've come for the first time today, it'll be great. I'll just share a link with you all, if you all can just fill that up so that we can serve you better in some ways, just to understand where you are, whether you're in India or you're in abroad, which city, and so on. So I've shared the link in the chat box. If you can please fill that up. Specifically those who've come for the first time, it'll just take less than a minute.
Yeah, any questions or any reflections, anyone? I know this is a subject, I mean, those who have been attending, we've discussed multiple times. And again, Krishna is stressing it here for our benefits that we remember. So we actually know that we are souls. In India, most of us, we know that we are not this body, we are soul. Bachpan se sunte aa rahe hain. But how do we apply this? Right? We need to reflect on that as well. How do we apply it in our day-to-day lives? It's like, I have a sewing machine, which is just like, this body is like a machine. Krishna describes yantra rudani maya. This body is just like a machine. I have a sewing machine. I oil it daily, which means I feed the body daily. I move it around. मैं उसको चलाता भी हूँ. But I don't stitch a single cloth, which means I don't use the body for the purpose it's meant for. What is the use of the body? Right? So we need to think, when we have this knowledge in our hand, how do I apply this? And if nobody has any questions or reflections, you could answer this question at least. How do you think you will be able to apply this knowledge of that I am not this body but the soul? What will you do?
I'm not this body.
We are not this body but we are soul. When you have this kind of information from Bhagavad Gita, and Krishna is elaborately describing different properties of the soul, how do you plan to use this information? How will you apply it in your day-to-day life?
Trying to improve our karma.
Trying to improve your karma, okay?
We should try to enlighten our soul. Now we know that the soul and body is different. Try to enlighten the soul, increase Krishna consciousness, and
Okay. Anything else?
Knowing it's just a material body, you move away from attachments, all your attachments and
Yes.
day to day. That's the biggest cause of suffering and misery.
Right. And how will you move away from attachment? Just with some information, will you be able to do it?
So, you make a conscious effort, probably also by chanting Hare Krishna regularly.
Okay.
One of the ways, one of the sadhanas like.
Sure. Yes, Narayani, what do you think?
It's spiritual awakening.
So what will you do for that?
Follow Krishna's teachings and chant his mantra.
Okay. Anyone else? All right. Any other questions from anyone? Else we'll quickly get on to Kirtan. Or any reflection?
Like living in the world but not living in the world. Something of that sort. I remember that was the first when we started Bhagavad Gita, living in the world but not really living life. Also.
Okay, so we have to be like lotus.
Lotus, yeah. You spoke. Yeah.
Always in the muddy pond, but it's untouched. Right. Nice. All right. So yeah.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
Yes, sorry, I was filling up the form, but I had a question to ask. If we have time, we can.
Sure,
can
sure.
we proceed?
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Yes, I'm Yagya, and I just want to know. You mentioned Mayavadis today, and there's a lot of confusion when we separate Mayavadism or the people who belong to this category. There are many Siddh Gyanis or Siddh Yogis who have followed the Gyan Marg or the Yoga Marg, but they have reached the devotional service stage. But then also their teachings, they're based on the marg that they have followed. So are their teachings also, they come under the category of Mayavad?
If you're referring to a specific example, this is a very, generic question for that. But yeah, I cannot, pinpoint. Okay, this person, although he attained so many things, is still preaching Mayavad. But generically speaking, I would say that there are many people who may have certain siddhis. That doesn't mean they're following the path of devotion. Just because someone has some powers, it doesn't mean that they're only because of devotion they're having powers. Devotion, of course, gives you a lot of energy and spiritual energy for that matter. But yeah, there are people who are on the spiritual path. They may try to practice some yoga. They may try to achieve certain siddhis. They may achieve certain siddhis also. But that's actually also another snare of Maya. So when somebody is on the spiritual path, Maya, she gets activated. So everyone is, and there is a beautiful bhajan of Lord Chaitanya, where I think Narottam Das Thakur is describing. So how everyone is sleeping in the lap of Maya, right? And anyone who tries to get up and go out of that lap of Maya, she is immediately activated, and she tries to capture him also, right? So people who are trying to follow spiritual path, they are actually bombarded with a lot of these allurements, and at every step there might be such allurements. So people who are following the longer route of Ashtanga yoga, which is a very, very tedious and cumbersome route, not bhakti directly, they may go through a lot of hardship to attain maybe one siddhi or two siddhi. There are ashta siddhis. So when they achieve even one or two, Maya again captures them, that, oh, you've achieved this transcendent, great position. You're so great. and then this person basically becomes a show off and tries to show some magic, right? They will produce some gold in their hand. They will, transfer from one place to the other. There is a siddhi called anima where someone can become very, very small and enter anything. There is lagima, one can become really, really huge. So there are so many different siddhis like that. But those who are entrapped in that siddhis itself, they don't progress further. And that's the pitfall in some other ways of approaching the Supreme Lord. Whereas in devotional service also, people get snared by multiple ways, but there is a lot of protection in devotional service. Like there is an entire devotee community who can pick you up and say, hey, you're going wrong. Right? There are friends and there is a saying, ekantika harir bhakti utpat eva kevalam. You should never try to do devotional service sitting alone in a secluded place, because there is always a chance to fall down there. But if you're in a community of devotees, there are people who can tell you that you're going wrong there, and you can course correct, right? So therefore, devotional service is the most safest path, and Srila Prabhupada has laid down, the entire program for us from morning till evening. If we simply follow that, all sorts of perfection will be with you. But our ultimate goal is to go back to Godhead. Does that answer?
You're right. Just one thing that I got your point, but what I'm specifically looking at is that are they categorized in the Mayavad category? Because
Yeah.
as for
Okay, I understood what you're saying. If they are preaching Mayavad philosophy, and what is Mayavad philosophy? We need to understand Mayavad philosophy to be able to categorize someone as Mayavadi. There is Brahmavadis, people who think that the Lord is impersonal, he doesn't have a form. That's Brahmavadi. And within that, Brahmavadis are fine. Even four Kumaras were Brahmavadis before they met Lord Vishnu and smelled the tulsi, fragrance of tulsi from his lotus feet. So Brahmavadis are also spiritualists. Krishna says, Vadanti tat tattvavidas tattvam yadnanam advayam brahmeti paramatmeti bhagavaniti shabdate. The absolute truth is realized in three features: Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan. Of course, the Bhagavan feature is the absolute, and one who knows Bhagavan feature understands completely the Paramatma and the Brahman feature as well. So Brahmavadis are fine. They can progress and become personalists, right? From impersonalist to personalist. But Mayavadis are people who think I am God, or I can, right? So that's their conception. They will greet each other, Namo Narayan. You are also Narayan, I am also Narayan, right? Like that. So that is, extremely theistic in one sense. Although they believe in God, but yes, it's the heights of, the sense gratification in one sense that, okay, I actually want to be God, or I am God. So we are suffering in the material world, or we are here in the material world because of the original sin that, oh, I want to be God. I want to enjoy separately from God. Why I am not God? Why Krishna is God? So it's the same display in the form of Mayavad philosophy, where I'm thinking that I can become God. And right now I am under the influence of Maya. Actually, I am God, but I'm under the influence of Maya. When the influence of Maya is, gone through some practice, I will again realize that, oh yes, I am the Supreme Lord actually, which we just discussed today. That we are only conscious of our own bodies. We are not the super soul who's conscious of everyone's body. I hope you understand the distinction now.
yeah,
So we can hear someone and understand that if the person is Mayavadi or is a Brahmavadi, and Mayavadi is very, very dangerous. So should not hear him immediately. And Prabhupada used to be extremely angry with Mayavadis. There were so many episodes where, there were these interfaith groups, and Prabhupada was invited, and there were some other people speaking. So once there was this Mayavadi person, he was speaking, he was talking, okay, some things from Bhagavad Gita, and then he started talking that how Krishna is not God. And and one disciple, he was describing this, how Prabhupada was biting his lips in anger, and his fist went like completely like this. And then he signaled the devotees to start kirtan. So this Mayavadi, in between his speech, could not continue because the devotees, they burst out into an uproarious kirtan there. So Prabhupada would not tolerate Mayavadi philosophy.
yeah.
All right, so we'll stop here. We'll do short kirtan and then we can.
I just have a small question.
Yes.
Do
Okay.
all the animals and birds and reptiles have a soul?
Yes. They're all individual. They're all individual.
So,
So in different.
so the next janam we say we take the soul can enter into any of these bodies?
Depending on two things: desire and deserve. Your karma and your consciousness or your desire at the time of death. Is that okay?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. We'll elaborately describe it in the next class. We're running out of time. Okay. I'll just get my done. Or नमो विष्णुपादाय कृष्णपृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदांत स्वामिनिति नामने नमस्ते सरस्वती देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देशतारिणे जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंदा श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासदि गौर भक्तवृंद हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna,
Krishna
Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna,
Krishna Krishna,
Hare Hare,
Hare
Hare
Rama,
Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare
Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama Ram Rama Hare Hare
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
So, thank you, everyone. We'll stop here. Hare Krishna. See you next week.
Hare Krishna. Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Krishna. Krishna.